Welcome to One Chapter, One Thought. I'm Pastor Chris from the Cruff Bible Church in New Jersey, and every weekday I read one chapter of the New Testament and offer one brief devotional thought. Today's reading is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 3. Again, Jesus entered the synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand, and they watched Jesus to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man with the withered hand, "Come here." And he said to them, "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. And he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out and immediately held counsel with the Herodians against him, how to destroy him. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great crowd followed. From Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem and Idumea and from beyond the Jordan and from around Tyre and Sidon. When the great crowd heard all that Jesus was doing, they came to him. And he told his disciples to have a boat ready for him because the crowd, lest they crush him. For he had healed many, and so that all who had diseases pressed around him to touch him. And whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." And he strictly ordered them not to make him known. And he went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach, to have authority to cast out demons. He appointed the 12, Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, to whom he gave the name Boanerges, that is, sons of thunder, Andrew, and Philip, and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. When his family heard it, they went out and seized him, for they were saying, "He is out of his mind." And the scribes who came down from Jerusalem were saying, "He is possessed by Beelzebub, the prince of demons. He casts out demons." And he called them to him, and he said to them in parables, "How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house is divided against itself, it cannot stand. And if Satan has risen up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand, but is coming to an end. But no one can enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man. Then indeed he may plunder his house. Truly I say to you, all sins will be forgiven the children of man, and whatever blasphemies they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit never has forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin. For they were saying, he has an unclean spirit. And his mother and brothers came and were standing outside, and they sent to him and called for him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said, "Your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you." And he answered them, "Who are my mother and brothers?" And looking at those who sat around him, he said, "Here are my mother and brothers, for whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother." One thought. Are crowds a good measure of the progress of the gospel? As Americans, the majority would be Americans listening to this, we love a good crowd, right? Like, we love bigger, we love better, we love growth that's always up and to the right. And unfortunately, in the history of, a lot of American churches, we often can justify all manner of bad theology and poor behavior from leaders by saying, look at how many people are getting saved, right? Look at the size of the crowd. But crowds may or may not be a sign of God's blessing. And in our passage today, in Mark 3, 7 through 12, it's a very small passage. It's one of those kind of in-between passages that is often easy to miss in the Gospels, but I think it's pretty significant. So this passage shows a great crowd following Jesus. But their motivation is fairly evident. They want to be touched by the healer. They have heard stories of Jesus healing, and, they want to be close to him. As one theologian comments on this passage, he says, they are attracted to Jesus, but they have no real understanding of him. And so I think it's also interesting to look at Jesus's attitudes toward the crowd. He accepts, without complaint, the large number of needs that are there, but he doesn't see in the large numbers a cause for celebration. He's not trying to juice the numbers. He's not trying to say, hey, like, we had this many conversions and this, right? He actually shows some reserve towards the crowd. He tells his disciples, hey, like, get me a boat. I don't want to get crushed by them. So I think the lesson here for us is that if attracting a crowd is the goal, then, that word or that deed or that ministry is not authentically Christian. Like, just attracting a crowd, that is not what the point is. We should respond to needs as they arise, right? Like Jesus, he can't control the size of the crowd. He responds to them. But at the same time, we should not be enamored by outward indicators like size and numbers and all of that. But, most importantly, we need to be enamored by Jesus and share the real Jesus with others. When some people come to us, when a little bit of people come to us, or a lot of people come to us, no matter the size of the crowds, we need to make sure we're giving them Christ, the real Jesus, and that they can know him.